Welcome to Ribbon. This is C# tutorial, and we're going to be talking about users input. So go back to Solo Learn, and it should be getting users input. It shouldn't be comments, so make sure you're on the right one. Getting users input. We click that, and it should be something like this: users input. Now, users input is basically storing data. Okay, console reline. This is a method. So I want you to read all this. I'm going to pause the video and come back. Okay, once you've read all this, you should know that console reline is a method and it is an assigned an input string. So basically, console reline is going to be asking the user to type in something. Okay, so in this example down here, as you can see, it says string your name, and it's not defining anything right now. This variable is not being defined. On the next line, it's asking you what is your name, and now it's defining the variable. It says your variable, well, your name equals an input. It's waiting for your input. Console reline is waiting for you to input something. It could be a number, uh, a letter, whatever, a name. It just has to be a string. It has to have the same data type up here. If it doesn't, it will have to be converted, and we're going to talk about that later on. And then it says console write line hello, placeholder is 0, and then it says your variable. So it's going to say hello, whatever you stored for your name. So let's actually try that out. I'm going to copy and paste this here just because it's a whole lot easier writing all this out, and I don't have a lot of time. I only have 10 minutes to show you all this. So now that we have this copied, we're going to click on debug, and it should say, okay, so it should say what is your name, and you should see a blinking cursor down there because it's waiting for your input. Now let's just type in Ray. Okay, and now you can see the program has terminated because it doesn't need to do anything else. And as you can see, it says hello Ray. Okay, so basically console reline is an input method and it's waiting for the user's input. All right, let's go back to Solo Learn. Okay, and you should read this right here. Stop and pause it. Okay, now that you've read that, I expect you to understand what console reline method is. It's very easy to understand. It's just input. And it says down here, it says note the empty parentheses and readline method. This means that it does not take any argument, which is right here. These parentheses don't have any argument in them, so you won't have to put anything inside of them. So let's just move on to the next question. Hope you get that. Okay, so it says drag and drop the options below to take user's input and store it in the temp variable. Okay, so we have a temp variable and we know the data type is a string, so it'll have to be a string. So we say temp, well, we know it's not main because that wouldn't make any sense. So we know it's not write line because we need to store something. We don't need to have a method where it's going to go to the next line. So it's going to be console dot readline. Sorry, console dot readline. And I expect you to actually do this before me. So I expect you to pause it and then try the question. Okay, so you can see that you're right. Okay, so users input. Now this is what I meant by conversion. So read this right here, this section, and I'm gonna stop and pause and explain all this to you. Okay, now that you've read it, basically console readline is a method and it returns a string. Okay, but if it's a number, like down here, it has an integer and the variable age, it will need to be converted to an integer 32. And the console readline is waiting for your input, so if you type in 5 or 10, it needs to be converted into an integer so that it can be stored in this variable right here correctly. Okay, so you have different types of data types to be converted, like you have convert to double, which would be like 5577, and then you have convert to Boolean, which is basically true or false. Okay, so conversion is very important. You can't convert double to an Boolean. Okay, if the data type is an integer, it has to be an integer. So if this was a double down here, this would also have to be a double. I hope that makes sense. Alright, so let's copy and paste this so that you can understand what I mean. Go back to Visual Studio. Okay. Okay, now that we have this, we're going to go to debugging. As you can see, our debugging is waiting for our input. So if we type in a number like 5, it says you are 5 years old. Okay, I hope that makes sense. I'm gonna actually show you an error. So go back to here and let's just type in double. Okay, and let's see if this works. We're gonna go to debug. Okay, so if we type in 1, it still should work because a double is double's a letter, even though it's 2. I'm guessing it still work with just one number. So if we go back and we do this one more time, go to debugging. So if we put in, let's say, a yes, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to crash. I don't expect you to do this. And why would it crash? Because yes is a string and this is a double. So I wouldn't suggest doing it, but I just want to show you the error. Okay, and I hope that makes sense to you. We have, it's converting your input and it's going to store it inside this variable. Okay, I hope that makes sense. The correct way was integer, and this is integer. Now if I wanted to do double, it would be like this. Double, and I would have to change this. As you can see, there's an error because I can't do that. But if I put this as double, everything's working properly. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Let's move on to the next section. Okay, and it says that if, I'm reading down here, it says if in the program above a non-integer value entered, for example, letters, the convert will fail and cause an error, which I just showed you. Okay, these have to match integer and integer. Okay, let's go on to the question. It says drag and drop the options below to make the following program work. So I expect you to pause this and try to answer this. Okay, and then we're going to come back. Okay, now that you're done that, okay, as you can see, it says double your variable, and then we have a string and variable name, and we see 77. Okay, that's actually a string. Okay, but we want to convert this string to a double, so we put in is convert to double. Okay, and when we're converting it to a double, this argument right here has to be where it's going to convert to. What do we want to convert? We want to convert x because it's a string. It's in parentheses, as you can see. These parentheses right here will turn the 77 into a string. Now, if it didn't have these parentheses, it would be an error. So let's see if this works. There you go. And that's it for getting user input. The next is comments.